Democratic Senator for Connecticut, Chris Murphy, saying the challenges America faces are metaphysical and even spiritual, and that his party ignores them at their peril. And Senator Murphy joins me from Washington. Senator Chris Murphy, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I want to first start by asking you your review of the debate between the two presidential candidates. Obviously, all the pundits, the polls, whether in the United States or even here abroad, have declared Kamala Harris the clear winner. But I want to ask you, is it in the areas that she needs to win, that the Democrats need to win, the swing voters, the undecideds?
They certainly heard about her plans, her specific plan to fix the border, her specific plan to address the cost of living. But maybe what is more important is that they got to see one president on stage and someone else who was in the middle of a 2-hour meltdown. Kamala Harris looked commanding. She was in charge of that stage. You watched her and you thought, that's a president of the United States. And I do think that that's a question that a lot of voters had. They know who she is, but they're not terribly familiar with her as a human being and as a person. Mm-hmm. And they saw somebody on that stage who is just ready to lead. And that may make the difference for a small number of voters. Okay, so that's one point that you all are grasping onto. But you just said another person in the midst of a 2-hour meltdown on stage. The issue for you, of course, is that this person is at least equal in the total voters and very, very competitive in swing voters with your candidate. So what is it about him? And I ask you this because you've been doing a lot of thinking and a lot of writing about how Democrats need to meet the moment. Sum up why it is that such a massive proportion of Americans view Donald Trump as a better leader. Well, I don't know that I have the answer for that question, but I think we do have to acknowledge that we live in a world today where the economy is getting better, the unemployment rate is as low as it can be, crime is going down, GDP is rising, and there's still a whole bunch of people in this country who report feeling more unhappy than ever before. They report feeling disconnected from their community. Levels of self-reported loneliness are through the roof. There are a lot of Americans who are employed, but who feel like they don't have meaning and purpose every day when they wake up. And I think we've got to have a broader conversation in this country about why that is and help give Americans access to positive meaning and identity. The MAGA movement is an identity. It is a source of connection and meaning for people. And when you don't have other more positive sources of identity, you retreat to negative sources of identity, demagogues who offer you a worldview in which they explain your troubles as being caused by people who look and sound different from you. So this is a big conversation for the country to have. It's a big conversation for the Democratic Party to have. But I think sometimes we get lost by thinking that our only job is to try to increase the health of the economy. Studies show that when it really comes down to it, happiness is not just your career or how much money you're making. Happiness is the question of how good are your relationships? Do you feel part of a community, something bigger than yourself? And I think we've done a really bad job of delivering that kind of purpose and meaning to people, even as we've done a better job of making sure that people have rising wages and have jobs that they can go to every day. So, you basically called it, given all the successes you talk about, you've called the disaffection a metaphysical problem, a spiritual crisis. And you have suggested, if I can sum up, a pro-family, pro-community, kind of economic nationalism. What exactly do you mean? And isn't that very much like your opponents? That's what Republicans are always talking about, pro-family, pro-community, and nationalism when it comes to the economy. Well, the irony is that Republicans, in particular the MAGA movement, do talk in some of those terms, but then when they're in power, they do the exact opposite. I do think people are not satisfied being part of a global economy. They want to be part of a unique American economy. Even more specifically, they want to be part of a distinct, unique place. They don't like that our culture has become flattened. They don't like that our downtowns have become eviscerated, and the only place that you can buy things from are transnational retail outlets like Amazon or Google. They want localness to matter. And Kamala Harris was on that stage the other night saying, I have a plan to breathe life back into small businesses so your downtowns come back to life, so you can feel good about belonging to a place, which is where a lot of people found meaning and identity for decades and decades. So yes, the rhetoric is familiar because we hear it on the right, but the policy is actually being put into place right now by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I just think they should talk more about what they're doing to break up consolidated power, to give power to families and communities, because it's real.
Can I ask you, do you think Democratic candidates have to sound a little bit more like Republicans? Because you certainly are sounding a little bit Republican right now in terms of taking that mantra. And as I said, they have become apparently the party of the working class, which the Democrats used to be.
Yeah, but they haven't, right? And in fact, if you look at the polling, low-income voters are still voting for Democrats way more often than they're voting for Republicans. But yes, we need to expose Republicans for the frauds that they are. The only major domestic achievement of their 4 years in power when Donald Trump was in the White House was a tax cut. 80 to 90% of the benefit went to billionaires, corporations, and millionaires. And so they talk about standing up for regular working people, but they don't do a great job of it. Here's the tough part for the Democratic Party. Listen, if we want to be the party of the working class, then we got to be the party of the working class. That means expanding our tent. That means being willing to bring into our fold people who may not agree with us on every single cultural and social issue. I care deeply about the issue of gun control. I care deeply about reproductive rights. But I am willing to bring people into our coalition who might not line up with me on all those issues, because if they are willing to break up consolidated power, if they are willing to support a higher minimum wage, then having them inside the coalition gives me a better chance to convince them to join us on things like climate change or choice or guns. That's a tough conversation for the Democratic Party, but I think it's a really important one.
Big issues, big thinking, big thoughts. Thank you so much, Senator Murphy.